Hey Summit Chasers, welcome to another episode of Voices of Impact, the podcast where you learn strategies to amplify your influence, impact, and how to take action towards your own purpose and mission. Today, my guest is Maureen Wiley Clough, the host of the It Gets Late Early podcast. She is on a mission to break ageism in tech. So we dive into the topic of ageism. What is it? How is it impacting all of us? And how can we actively work against it? Get ready to be inspired. It starts right now. Hello, everybody. Today I have Maureen with me, who is the podcast host of It Gets Late Early, and I am excited to dive into this conversation. We are going to talk about ageism and what that looks like in the workplace and what it looks like as a woman growing up, getting older, moving through life. So I'm really excited to have you here, Maureen. Let's dive into this one.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to have the opportunity to talk about the one ism that's actually coming for everybody. So yeah, in this divided world, it's one thing we can all fight together.
We all have this thing in common. We are all getting older every second of the day.
Oldest you've ever been right now.
Mm-hmm. Right now. And again right now.
Right now. Mm-hmm. Again.
Yep. Okay, so talk to me a little bit about why you're so passionate about this topic.
Well, first and foremost, I think that the fact this podcast exists might actually be a midlife crisis in and of itself. Like I was like, wait, I'm about to hit 40 and I really am not here for the notion that as I continue to go on in my life, my value diminishes. I don't like that. It doesn't sit right with me. And certainly as a woman, I can tell you we've been told to get older is the worst possible thing we can do. We strive to look as young as possible. We're constantly chasing the fountain of youth. We are hawked anti-aging products from, now it's like essentially happening for Gen Alpha. They're, 10-year-olds going to Sephora to get a face mask. And it's like, dude, you're 10. It's pretty toxic. But yeah, I started to feel like, okay, this message that I've been receiving my whole life has actually made me ageist, right? Because I fear getting older. I look at older women and I think I want to keep my youth and my vitality. And that's so incredibly messed up. And then I think about the fact that there's just this marginalization of people who are older in our society. And it's like, wait a minute, in other societies, elders are looked upon as these wells of wisdom and they're sought after mentors. And why is it not so here? And specifically not so in the workplace, in the tech industry where I've made my career. I was called a dino at age 37 and it hit me. I was like, wait a minute. I actually am one of the oldest people at this company at age 37. And what a loss, right? Like to think about all the people who have had more life experience, just even plain life experience, not even work experience, that aren't in the mix here. And what could go wrong by not having that diversity of thought available to you by virtue of actually employing people at different life stages and of different generations. And there are literally 5 generations working together in the workforce right now. And in tech, it seems like maybe they have 1 or 2 in a lot of companies. And it just struck me as something that really diminishes the value creation that's possible in the workplace if we don't actually harness the skills of people of different generations. So I thought this is something that I see as a major problem and for some reason has not been incorporated into diversity, equity, and inclusion and belonging conversations in the corporate world. And I want to change that. So we all should have the ability to work as long as we want or need to be employed. And companies that actually recognize the value of workers across the age spectrum, they're going to have better outcomes and more innovation. It's just like any other type of diversity. So that is why I started this show, to get this out into the open, to have these conversations. And it's the one thing that we all share, right? This one ism is coming for everybody.
Yeah. That's so interesting and actually mind-blowing that at the age of 37 that you were referred to as a dino. Like that's actually absurd. Actually absurd. But yeah, I think that you bring up such a valid point of the tech industry specifically. It's a very, very interesting industry and what would appear that they don't necessarily look for. older
and
people.
if you look at the median age of the American worker across all different industries, it's markedly higher than that in the tech industry. And I'm talking even at the biggest companies around, where you might think the average age would creep up a bit. I mean, it's like 29 at Facebook. It's at HP was like maybe 39. I can't remember exactly what those pieces of data are, but I could certainly find them for you. But it was the average age of the American worker, however, is like 42. So it was a significant delta there. And so it's actually true. And then when you think about the funding mechanisms that make tech possible, it's usually made possible by venture capitalists, right? And venture capitalists, as prominent as Peter Thiel, would say, hey, we're actually going to fund scholarships for founders, but they can't be older than 23. Like that was one thing that Peter Thiel of PayPal said. Mark Zuckerberg famously said, young people are just smarter. Now he's almost 40. I bet he's going to change his mind on that. I wonder how, I mean, that's like the definition of a statement not aging well, but it's like, this is a common thing. Paul Graham, who was the founder of Y Combinator, which is a really famous startup incubator, said, after age 32, investors, they get a little bit skeptical about founders' ability to do the job. So there actively is an age bias against older people in the tech industry, which is also ridiculously nonsensical when you consider that tech itself is not that old. And the oldest among us actually built a lot of the foundational tech that we work on today. So it's like, come on. This is insane.
A bit contradictory.
Yeah, just a bit. Mm-hmm.
And so interesting. I really like what you said, though, of for you, like you started at almost like a midlife crisis. You're like, okay, I'm almost 40. But I love that you are making a stand of like you refuse to buy into what we have kind of all been brought up with, which is that as we age, we're less valuable. So talk to me a little bit about how you're challenging that, you're not accepting that, and what people can do to go down a similar path. Because I think that it's so easy for us to think like if you lose your looks or whatever it might be as you age, something that maybe you used to lean into in life, that it can be a scary thing to start to go through.
Absolutely. And I can speak for myself as a woman, right? Like we have been told that a lot of the value that we deliver to society is in, unfortunately, our appearance. It's incredibly messed up. And I want to fight back against that. But I'm also in a weird position where I have to make my way in the world. I have to get jobs. And let me tell you, I have talked to so many women in the tech industry who've said point blank to me, and I'm one of them, by the way, who has felt like they needed to look at least a decade younger than their actual biological, chronological age in order to be considered relevant and to have a shot at these jobs. And that is a very real thing. And so it is. But there is absolutely a marginalization of older women, older men too, but not to the same degree as women. The intersectionality with gender and age is really massive and hugely detrimental to women. But I can say that it's almost a privilege. I hate to say this, but I really truly believe it. It's almost a privilege to be able to age, quote, naturally as a woman, because you have to have a certain amount of social capital, political capital, financial capital, literal capital, right, in order to have that be a safe choice for you. And so, there are a lot of celebrities out there, right, who are talking, Andy, oh gosh, I'm totally forgetting her. Is it like Andy McDowell? Andy Dowell? Do you know what I'm talking about? Anyway, she came out there recently and she's gone completely gray. And she's talking about how she doesn't want to dye her hair. I know Sarah Jessica Parker has talked about ageism. I know Anne Hathaway has talked about it as well. And a lot of these women have said, you know what, not all of them, but a lot of them have said, hey, I actually want to push back against this concept that I have to dye my hair or that I have to get Botox or any of this. And that's great. And I love that they're setting an example for us, but that's also a privileged position to be in, where they have built a career that has probably handed them, in many cases, literally millions of dollars, and they can make that choice. I still applaud them. I still think it's brave, but I think we have to recognize that it's not something that just the average person necessarily can do. Of course, there are all sorts of other things there, like the privilege to be able to have the money to go and try and make yourself look nice, to buy makeup, buy clothes, get your hair dyed, etc., do Botox, which is extremely expensive. But there is this element of, it's not necessarily safe for everyone. And so I'm sitting here saying, I want to make it safe for people to age naturally, whatever that means. But I just want people to be able to do it the way that makes them feel comfortable. But I mean, I am a host of a show that's all about the experience of getting older in the tech industry. And yet I myself actively seek to look younger as a woman in the society. So I struggle with wanting both sides, right? And I struggle with it, and I don't blame myself at all, because I'm trying to make my way in a world that's taught me that to get older is bad. And
Right.
1 in 2 of us, according to the World Health Organization, WHO, the World Health Organization says 1 in 2 people are ageist. A full 50% of our population is ageist. And those stereotypes that we've been fed our whole lives basically start actually impacting us at the age of 4. So kids as young as age 4 have actually started spouting off really harmful, inaccurate biases about getting older. And I can tell you, my own children, I have 2 children, both of them have somehow received the message that to get older is a bad thing. And they will say to me, like, Mom, you're old, as if it's like a sick burn. And I'm like, where is this coming from? This is crazy. So I want to get to a place where we can start actually admiring people who've been there, done that, and learn from them, from the wisdom that they've gained over time. I want them to be valued in the society in a way that they should be. And that's not to the detriment of younger people either.
No.
I mean, young people I learn from all the time. I have a person who helps me with my social media. He's Gen Z. He's fantastic. He teaches me stuff daily. He's amazing. And it's a very perfect example of how the power of diversity works, right? Like, I learn things from a younger person. He learns things from me. I learn things from older people. And that's why if you have an age diverse spectrum of people at your company, you're going to have higher innovation, better outcomes. And not only that, guess who the customer base is? It's increasingly an older customer base. We are getting older so quickly in the society. The demographic change is upon us. They're calling it the silver tsunami, which definitely has some bad connotations. But the fact is, we are getting a lot older as a populace, and we need to serve the needs of those customers. So smart business owners will understand that they need a representative group that is similar to the customer base and the population out there internally in order to serve the needs of those very people. Because it takes a certain kind of hubris to be like, oh, I can sell something to someone who's completely different from me, and I don't have any other sort of associations with people in that space. And we're just not going to have the same kind of business outcomes that we could. So it's not just the right thing to do. It's like the business smart thing to do. So we need to get on this, and we need to do it quickly.
There was so much that you just talked about that I'm like, hey, I want to talk about this. I want to talk about that.
That's the ADD in me. I go all over the place.
So I think another thing that I want to highlight is, like you said, the importance of having a diverse workforce across all different age spans, because like you said, they are going to bring a different type of knowledge, different value than somebody who's 25 or 22.
Yep.
And I am in no means discrediting the 22-year-olds. Like you said, they are incredibly smart. They have a whole wealth of knowledge as well. But I think for us to be truly balanced and to open up the thought diversity within a business, you need both ends of the spectrum, because you are able 100%. To learn so much from both sides. And if you're constantly striving to have a younger generation, you're missing out on ideas, creativity, problem solving, just so much. So I think it's paramount really to the success of the company to have that spectrum.
Yeah. And actually
on board.
I would say also, traditionally or of late, I would suggest that lots of employers have been seeking to find millennials. We've been sort of the vaunted, sought after demographic. Everybody wants to hire millennials. They were pushing older employees out. For example, at IBM, they got sued for this, but they were pushing older workers out in order to hire millennials. Well, guess what? We're millennials, and now Gen Z is probably the it hire, right? But Gen Z, there was a study done by Adobe recently, and they did a survey, and they found that 83% of people in Gen Z really desperately wanted a mentor at work, and only 52% of them actually had one. So despite what business owners might want in hiring the younger people, right, they also have a need to fulfill the desires of the younger people that they do employ. And the fact is, the younger people want older people from whom they can learn. That is something they want. So if you actually give them what they want, they're likely to stay at the company longer than they otherwise would have, right? And that's something that a lot of companies are trying to inspire, is loyalty, right? And tenure. And people are always constantly concerned about people running off and not staying long at the companies. And what's also funny is stereotypes come into play so much here. And so there's the stereotype of, oh, for example, an older candidate looking at a job might be seen as by the hiring manager as a flight risk because he or she might be close to retirement, and that might be a concern. But actually the data say that older employees actually have longer tenure than younger employees. So there's just all this there's all this bias that's worked into the equation because we all bring ourselves to work and we all have preconceived notions of what it means to be younger or older and what they deliver and what they don't and all of that. And it just gets all mixed up into a lot of misinformation, a lot of judgment, and we need to do the work. And unfortunately, only 8% of companies right now are actually doing the work of including age as one of the factors in their DEIB initiatives and their training. So yeah, we have a long way to go on this, but they're only hurting themselves by not actually pulling this into the mix with all the other work that they do. And it's something that also can't merely be solved by having an HR group teach their talent acquisition team about this, because the fact of the matter is hiring manager, the talent acquisition team, and recruiters, they might actually pull in the candidates, but they're not the people actually making the hiring decision. Those are the hiring managers. So this sort of training and this sort of conversation needs to happen up and down throughout the ranks of an organization in order to be impactful.
Yeah.
So
100%. Yeah. If you're not, if your hiring managers are ruling people out simply because of their age, also just incredibly unfair. Like it 100%. Needs to be, and maybe that's something that goes into just the overall hiring process within the organizations, is understanding what you're truly looking for from a candidate. Age should have absolutely nothing to do with it. It should have everything to do with what skills do they have, what's the outcome that you're looking for within the role, and who's the best person to help you actually get there. And I think to judge the length of time, the longevity of an employee's lifetime with you is silly to do. I think, like you said, I've heard more so that on the other side of what you had said, that there's a flight risk for older. I've actually heard repeatedly that Gen Z don't really stick around for more than like 18 months at a time. But a lot of the time, what I've heard that they're missing is either, like you mentioned, a mentor, but Gen Z wants a path. They want to understand what their career looks like, what their goals are, how can they grow. And if they don't have that, they're going to bounce and they're going to go to a company that can provide them that. So I think it's not necessarily about who it is that's applying. It's about how your company is set up and structured to allow for longevity within a position, again, regardless of what age they are.
Yeah. And you think about how that comes into play with the fact that, for example, I would say the boomer generation, they were taught, and probably Gen X too, were taught, hey, put your head down, just do hard work, do good work, and you'll get rewarded. That's not how we were taught, right? Like that's not the way we've experienced the workplace in the millennial and Gen Z category. We've been told, like, go up the ladder, but we haven't seen it happen for us. And so we have that agency. That's the way sort of we were molded and shaped in our specific generation. And so what I'm seeing as a problem here is that the generational sort of norms, if you will, like how people operated in the workplace, they differ, but there's no understanding about the differences and why, someone in Gen Z might come and say, hey, I want this career path. Whereas someone in the boomer generation might say, gosh, why are you asking for this? You're so privileged, or, you just got to pay your dues. Like the workplace has changed. It's shifted a lot. We no longer have the job security that was enjoyed by past generations. We don't have the 30 years and the gold watch retirement. That's not a thing anymore. Right. And so the way we operate in the workplace and the norms that we actually inhabit, like they are distinct. And there's just a problem with misconstrual and miscommunication on what, the path is to get where we all ultimately want to go. We are all so much more similar than we are different. And that is the problem too, is a lot of this intergenerational warfare. It's ridiculous ageist, like clickbait. It's to get views. It's to distract us from what's actually happening and the broken systems that we have in society. Right. So, I mean, that's the other issue here is there's so much just finger pointing and divisiveness and really flexibility at work isn't just something for, the young people or the people who are working parents and have young children. Like flexibility at work is great no matter your age. We all want the ability to have a hybrid workforce and to go into the
Right.
office when it makes sense and not when it doesn't. Remote work has been a boon to so many different people across age spectrums and
Yeah.
across different socioeconomical divides and whatnot. And it's like we all need the same thing. We just need to figure out how we can better talk about this, which is why it's really critical that we have a lot more awareness on, what are basically, first of all, we have all 5, hopefully, generations represented in the workforce. And then we figure out how we can actually ensure that there is communication intergenerationally and that we do it with respect and that we have, a better sort of way of having these conversations. Because right now, they're just flat out not happening. Like there was a study that came out recently that suggested that basically no one in Gen Z is talking to anyone over 50 at their companies and vice versa. And it's like, wait a minute, this is a problem. Like there's so much we're leaving on the table by not facilitating these conversations and this mentorship, which by the way is bidirectional. It's not old person to young person. It goes the other way as well. And we're just missing the mark, and we're literally not creating as much shareholder value, which is what everybody's all about in tech, right? As we would otherwise be if we were to do this. So
yeah,
it's important.
It absolutely is. What have you come across? What has been like the most eye-opening thing that you've encountered with hosting your podcast and just the different conversations that you're having?
I would say how pervasive it is. I mean, this is felt by everyone, and it's something that despite that gets so little airtime. And so that has been so shocking to me. This is such an ever-present concern for people, the young and the old. I mean, before I even launched the show, I was doing research and I went into, it was a Reddit or a Quora forum, and there was literally a person who posted it. He said he was a 19-year-old male. He said, I am deciding between going into medicine and going into tech, but I'm really worried about ageism and getting pushed out of the tech industry over time because I know tech hates old people. So should I be a doctor instead, where your age is actually valuable? In fact, there's probably ageism the other way, where they are like, oh, you don't have much experience, you're probably not capable.
Right.
It stunned me that it was that much of an issue that someone at age 19 would be considering that. Like that's how much of a secret, open bias it is, right? And yet no one's talking about it. That seemed bizarre to me. So that has been what is, I'd say, been most surprising to me, is that it is so prevalent and everybody has a story about it. Everybody has a deep-seated fear about it. And yet, I've had episodes where I've had to actually cloak the name and keep anonymous the guest because of the fear of what it could do to, in this case, her career, if her name were out there. So this is something that people don't want to talk about out loud for fear of how it could damage their personal reputation or somehow impede their progress. So to me, this is like my Roman Empire. I'm like, this is ridiculous. We should all be valued no matter how many years we have on the planet. We should all have an opportunity to get up to have an at-bat at that interview. It shouldn't matter. And I just absolutely reject the idea that I am less valuable now because I'm over 40. I can't stand that thought. And I've barely even scratched the surface of what ageism can do and wield on people. The data doesn't lie. It is really rough. If you lose your job over age 50, chances are it wasn't your choice, and you will take up to twice as long to find a job as you did last before when you were younger, under 50. And not only that, the job that you eventually find will pay you less money than the one that you were kicked out of. So it's really got an incredibly harmful effect. And certainly we're living longer and longer, hopefully healthier lives. And so we need to figure out a way to sustain ourselves. So this has huge societal impacts. And it blows my mind that it hasn't been focused on more than it has already. So it's time.
I will say I was not necessarily aware. I mean, I think I've definitely heard the term floated around, but I wasn't aware of the impact that it had in like across the board, I guess, until we actually had this conversation. So I think that that's something that comes up often when I'm speaking to people, is just the awareness. And truly one of my favorite parts about doing this podcast is all the new things that I'm becoming aware of, and that it's just opening my mind to, and hopefully I can now lead in a different way too, because I'm more aware of what's going on as far as ageism goes. what do you think could be a path forward, like an attainable thing to start to see a difference?
Well, I think the focus on figuring out exactly how to quantify the value of having an age diverse team is really critical,
Mm,
because tech and companies, corporate generally, they're not going to do anything. They might, put up a mission statement, but there's no validity to it. There's no validity to, we care about diversity if they don't in fact then go walk the talk, right? And
mm,
so what's going to move them is quantifiable evidence that suggests that they are otherwise missing out. And so I'm happy to say that, the London School of Economics has something called the Inclusion Initiative. And I actually recently spoke on their panel, and they were paired up with a consulting firm called Protivity Business, and based out of the UK. And they're actually engaging in research to find out what the productivity gains are associated with actually employing an age diverse group at a
that's
company.
cool.
So I'm really excited about the findings from that report, because I am
Hmm.
absolutely certain they're going to end up proving exactly what we've just been talking about, right? Which is that
Yeah.
there's enhanced value in business creation that comes from doing the right thing. So it's not just, philanthropy, it's actually good business sense. So
Yeah.
that's what I'm most hopeful to see, and what I think is going to move the needle, for lack of a better term. It's such an annoying tech term, but it's gonna make the biggest difference.
Yeah. I mean, putting numbers in front of business owners and leaders, I think, is the way to open eyes
Yeah,
oftentimes.
100%.
Um, and
That's how we'll win. It's coming in through the business leaders. It's not going
right.
through, you need the allyship 100% with the, HR teams at these companies,
Yeah.
100%. But HR usually doesn't drive decisions at the companies, right? They're typically
Hmm.
more of the messenger, right? Layoffs, by the way, for example, like, it's not HR that's architecting these layoffs. In fact,
Right.
most of the time, layoffs are impacting HR, right? Their teams are getting decimated.
Yeah.
They're among the first to go. So in order to actually make an impact, it's important to go work with the business leaders. And that's another area where I feel like my background is really helpful, because I worked in partnerships and business development at
Hmm.
startups for most of my career. And so, it's taking disparate groups, moving them towards a future that had not been realized, and not a vision that hadn't been realized before. And that is literally what we have to do when it comes to this initiative. It's pushing people towards actually considering this as something that's critical to their business,
Hmm.
that has never even been on the table. So
Yeah.
I'm hopeful about being able to attack it from that angle, and
Yeah.
see a lot more impact that way.
It's a big feat, but I think one that's absolutely needed and that needs to be taken on. Because, like you said, and it's not worldwide. In a lot of cultures, the elderly, like you said, are looked up
Yeah.
to, and
Mm-hmm.
are these say like so full of wisdom, and we want to learn as much as we can from them. But for whatever reason, it has not necessarily carried over to, I think, how we function in the
Yeah.
States. I can't speak for everybody. Obviously, there's going to be some cultures that have kept that, I think, within the States, but I think predominantly it's not something that we've held on to.
I agree. And you think about how few, or how a lot of our society does not have intergenerational living, right? So
Mm,
it used to be much more common that there would be various generations within one household. Now it's
yeah.
usually parent and child. It's not grandma, grandpa as well.
Yep.
And so there's not that exposure even to people who are older. And I think we as a society, and I can at least speak for the US, we are so insular in the way in which we parent, and the sort of, everybody's on their own island, if you will. And so it's like we don't even get to interact with people of different ages very much. And I think
Mm.
that's part of the problem, is just the othering, and the lack of understanding, just by virtue of not having the opportunity to connect with people who aren't our age, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That exposure and what we were just talking about, like, I think us being able to do podcasts and speak to so many different people, our eyes are much more open. But I think if we can actively put our children in spaces where they are interacting with older generations, younger generations, like we said, it goes both ways. It's not just about the elder generation, it's about mixing everybody together and learning from each other. I think that that's really how we get the most value too, because there's so much to
Yeah.
be said for bringing in an elderly group and then bringing in a younger group and having them
Yeah.
compare and contrast and bounce off each other and learn from each other because of life experiences. The younger generations are growing up in a completely different way to how
Yep.
even we have grown up, to how those older generations have grown up. And I think
Yeah.
that it's a huge disservice to all of us to not find the beauty in learning from each other.
Couldn't agree more. Very well put.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Couple more questions for you. What is the impact that you want to have made when you're gone?
I want to have awakened corporate and tech to understand that people have value no matter what age they are, and that they are going to actually have better business outcomes when they recognize that. So that my goal, I hope everybody wakes up. I hope this is something that is I hope there's no need for a podcast like mine when I'm gone, because we've already fixed it.
I love that. And then what summit are you currently chasing?
Oh man. I suppose the summit I'm chasing is to get to the point where I can say all of that impact actually occurred. So I'm hoping that we will have, achieved a lot more parity when it comes to hiring and retaining employees across all different age bands. It's not great out there for anyone. Like, the young people don't have it really great right now either. I've talked to so many people who have said to me, who for first and foremost, I have to say, like, I have the curiosity about what it's like to be older, and they actually listen to the show in contemplation of what their future lives will be like. So first and foremost, that's awesome, right? That they're thinking about others and thinking about the experience that they might have in the future. So many of us think we're never going to get old. That's part of the problem, right? It's a problem for tomorrow. And I know I'm still 29 in my mind. It's bizarre. I've never aged. But people, these people that I've talked to have thought about the future, and they also think about the future in a way that's really, really harmful, in the sense that there's this rush to achieve. There's this concept that if you don't make the 30 under 30 Forbes list, or if you don't have millions of dollars, or if you don't succeed and own your own business and kill it, crush it, whatever, that you're nothing. And if you hit 30 and you haven't achieved something, well, your has-been is too late. So this rush to drive for just relentless pursuit of accomplishment and whatnot before you even hit 30 is incredibly harmful. The stress that young people are under is outrageous. And so many of them can't even find jobs right now, right? Because, they're looking for someone with 10 years of experience in an entry-level job. It's like, how does that work, right? So I do think that there are a lot of really harmful societal pressures on young people too, that we need to get rid of. So we need to change this obsession with youth in our society. We need to stop this like relentless hurtling towards some, whatever benchmark that we've set that I think is incredibly damaging. And we need to just let people live and realize that we're going to, hopefully, if we're lucky, have a problem like with ageism, right? Like, we even get to that point. But the fact is, we need to recognize that our lives are going to unfold over a much longer time frame than they used to. And we need to be ready to have different chapters of our careers and of our lives, and be open to the pivots and the changes and the shifts and all of that. And just not set ourselves on this one strict path that I think has been extremely harmful. So I hope there's absolutely no reason to have this show at some point. I hope that young people are allowed the grace of experimenting and trying new things and testing out different career paths, and that we just all can have a lot more empathy for ourselves and for others, and just chill. I want us all to chill out, be more accepting, be more tolerant, be curious, and be open-minded about people who are different from you in any regard, right?
And also, I'm going to add, I know that this is not my summit, but I'm going to add to the sentiment of what you had just said, in that if we could all shift our opinions of aging and stop fearing it and instead embrace it, because like, it's an honor to reach certain ages. Like,
it is.
Not some kids don't get out of childhood, or whether that be to illness or accident or whatever it might be. And I think that for all of us, it can be a reminder and a wake-up call to truly just enjoy life, embrace it,
100%.
Be grateful for the different stages that you reach. And I guess
there's a beauty in each stage.
Absolutely.
There's a beauty in each stage. And, the older you get, you see more things happen where people sadly do not have the very huge honor of getting older. And it is literally a privilege. And we need to see it that way. We need to be grateful for it. We need to celebrate it, and not be so fearful of it, and try to make it look different in our minds than it had been prior, right? Like, we should have more representation of people in older age doing great things. I mean, right now it just isn't even shown in the media often, and it's getting better. I really am hopeful. I'm seeing a lot more representation of older people. And even if you look at the way that, and Just Like That, which is the Sex and the City reboot, if you contrast the way those women are actually represented on screen with, say, the Golden Girls, right? Like that's crazy. That's a huge shift. And so there is some growth, and I'm really excited about that. And I think conversations like these will continue pushing us in that direction. And I just, enjoy life, enjoy whatever stage you're in. It's really important.
Yeah. I'm really appreciative of this conversation because I'm definitely at an age where I've been less than thrilled when birthdays come around. Right. And I like truly, and because like 34, I'm almost to my mid 30s. And then you're like, oh, okay, now I'm closer to 40 than I was 30 and all that. Yeah. But I think like just through having this conversation, it has allowed me to, I mean, I can't say it's going to be perfect all the time. I hate those thumbs up things. I can't say it's going to be perfect all the time, but at least be like much more aware of what we had just said, like that it is a privilege to age and to experience life and all the different stages that come with it. So I appreciate you in this conversation, and I think what you're doing is so important and needed.
Thank you.
So thank you for your time and speaking with me today.
Thank you so much. It was wonderful to be here.
And that wraps up another episode of Voices of Impact. Thank you so much for joining us today. If you found value in our conversation, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. For more inspiring stories and actionable advice, make sure to hit that notification bell so you never miss an episode. Also, we would love to hear your thoughts and takeaways, so please leave us a comment below. And remember, no matter where you are on your journey, you have the power to climb higher and chase your summit. Until next time, Summit Chasers, keep pushing forward and stay inspired.